All right. Thank you guys for coming. It's really fun to get to perform and then do this, so thanks for all this. So, courageous vulnerability, how can men support women to speak up and be seen, yeah, and be heard? I think that we have to start with an understanding of the denial, of the secrecy, of the shame that surrounds experiences that women may not naturally speak up and be heard about, right? So without dealing with the root of the problem, we cannot find the solution. On my way over here, I took a Juno, like an Uber, right? And the driver held me in the car, did not take me where I wanted to go, was not taking the turns when I said, please go this way, and was not following the map. And it's just about a 5-minute ride from my place, and the fear, even in a micro incident like that, right? Our brains, our neocortex up here goes offline on an fMRI scan, and your amygdala is overactive in a 60th of a second, and you're in fight or flight. And my thinking brain that I'm using to speak to you guys right now was not working properly, right? Because I was in survival mode. So the questions that I received upon arrival, even from these amazing theater artists and wonderful, loving, empathetic people, were not questions that understood my survival brain in those moments. And so what I think has to happen is proper education on what happens in those instances so that men and women and people who are non-binary and do not identify as men or women, because let's be as inclusive as possible, so that we all as humans start addressing people who have survived situations in an informed way that allows for space to be held for us to feel safe enough to share our experiences. Because when we come at these experiences with disbelief, or what could you have done, or maybe that wasn't the intention, or any of that, which in and of itself doesn't sound horrible, even in a tiny little instance like that, right, which was not necessarily life or death, I mean, I don't know, but it wasn't today, thank God, we are slowly chipping away at survivors' and victims' abilities to speak up and be heard. So we have to start there. We have to start with educating on the brain so that people get it. Because apparently, every woman on earth saying me too is not enough. So I think that we have to do something more, and this is my answer to it.
Thank you. Great. So Devon.
Sure. Thank you. And pressure's on for the only guy here to like speak for all the men in the world. No.
No, you don't have to do that.
No,
don't take that on.
Which I would never take on. You know, I first want to acknowledge Cara and the cast. I mean, that was, can we give it up for them? That was an amazing group. And, I never want to come into a place, and especially with something as important as this, and act like I have the answers, right? And I think that something you said was a really great start to it. For men, I think it has to start with an awareness, right? Like there's an awareness of where there is this power dynamic that is off, right? And sometimes just that awareness is first. I think once that happens, the most technical way I can say how a man can really support women in this is to shut up. No, really. Like, we have a tendency sometimes to want to fix. We have a tendency to want to give our advice. And from my experience of working with men, this is in a realm of we know what we know what we don't know, but this is in the realm of something we don't know we don't know. And you got that, right? Like we're still in the realm of what we know, then we know what we don't know, we're still in the realm of what we know. But then this is an area of what we don't know. And how do we support people is to really get into listening with empathy. And, sometimes people, I think we have a tendency to give advice and suggestions when nobody asked for it, right? So in this beautiful movement that's happening, I think that there's something special really going on. there's a shift in consciousness that's happening, and that's where it's going to really make a difference. And sometimes we focus on the behavior change, but behind the behavior change has to be a consciousness change, right? And so that is when we can get really into the thinking behind some of the stuff going on. And I think that's where the conversations begin. For men, I think it's really for us creating a safe space for women and for men to be able to speak up to other men, right? So just because I'm a guy and I don't disrespect, you know, I'm not going to be disrespectful or be a certain way to a woman, that isn't enough, right? There's another step for that, and the next step is what happens when you're in an environment when another guy is doing something where it may be disrespectful to a woman or really putting a woman in a compromising position. Are you willing to have the courage, right, to speak up, right? Because not doing anything, just saying that I'm doing the right thing isn't enough. You have to also be responsible for the people in your surroundings. And I think that if we take those steps, if we start listening, if we start creating, you know, just a safe container to really hear what's going on and not act like we know, but then also speak up, I think that's important. And as a father, I think that, you know, I have a really big belief that if you want to change the world, change yourself first. Yes. If you want to change the world, change yourself, then change your family, right? Start with yourself, start with your family.
That's our time.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. And thank you, Cara, again, an amazing cast and a really incredible and powerful performance, and it really made me think about a lot of things. Artists sort of came in here tonight with a lot of emotion about what's been happening, especially the past week, which I'm sure a lot of you share. But I really, to speak directly to the question, you know, a lot of the work that I do in public health, I work particularly in East Africa, and we, with communities, design health programs to really affect the most sustainable change to improve the health of particularly women and children. And we start by listening. We start by asking the community what is their priority. And it's really radical listening. It's you know, asking the types of questions to try to elicit that empathy about what people are experiencing and to observe. So it goes beyond listening and asking about what someone wants. It's really observing their day-to-day and just understanding that from that perspective. And I think that idea of coming from a place of empathy is critical to when my husband says, what can I do differently? You know, I want to be more aware of this. It's starting from that place of, you know, you do have to listen more, you know, listen to what women are saying, but it's almost putting out there, there's a great exercise that I went around on social media just of this last week, and I'd heard about it before, but a professor basically runs in his class, he asks men and women in his class to think about if you were to go for a run early in the morning, you know, think about the things that you would do to prepare for that and write them down on a list. So he has, you know, category, what would men do, what would women do? And sure enough, women probably have about 20 different things in their minds about what they would do because they're thinking, how would I be able to prevent an assault when I'm out running by myself? Maybe I carry mace with me, maybe I put my key in my hand so I could use it as a weapon. They're thinking of this, what do I do if something happens to me? Whereas men, maybe one or two things, but that's really not as much on their mind. And it was funny, I was reading about this, and then a couple days later my husband brought it up because I think that is getting out there, that message. And he sort of said it to me as if it was the first time he really thought about it, which I think is really powerful. It's just a very simple thing, just to sort of, what is it like to walk in a woman's shoes? And I don't think that we're doing enough of that to promote that feeling. And I do worry about you know, the fact that Me Too has done something. It hasn't done enough, but now there's a backlash, which is inevitable, but there's a really strong backlash. And I think it really suggests something that's going on in this country of, over 300 million people. People have diverse thoughts and opinions, but something is still very, very broken. Whereas how we're socialized as girls and boys in this, and particularly in this country and in this society, it is contributing to what I feel is happening. But it also can be part of the solution. And it's about thinking about these things that we've all kind of talked about today, and really sort of getting to the core and the root issue and being empathetic.